It's recording. We just take one take and then I think this will be it. I have 6 questions for you. As a matter of fact, 7. The first one is, can you introduce yourself? Because that's necessary for a video.
I'm Tim Frank Andersen. I'm from Copenhagen. I have been running several agencies over the last 25 years, primarily in the digital area. And I've been founding a lot of startups as well, 5 or 6 pieces. And then I've written a few books on the digital development. And each year I publish 10 predictions from the tech world for the year to come.
Thank you. In your first presentation you mentioned 10 predictions. I'm very curious, what is your 11th prediction?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually have a long list which I compiled down to the 10 that I think is the most interesting. I think the stuff we talked about in the other part, about the whole ability for technology to be a lever in our quest for saving the world, while at the same time also creating a lot of challenges. To understand that better for companies and really get into that might be the 11th advice.
Okay, I'll just let you talk until you're finished, because otherwise it's not to be used. I heard a lot of interesting stuff and a lot of difficult stuff, especially about ethics, but what is the biggest challenge for agencies, for advertising agencies, communication agencies in this era?
I think as an agency you want to stay on top of the development, so your clients can come to you and get advice about where to go and what will happen. If we lose that grip, we also lose the ability to be a trusted advisor of the clients we have. So I think a huge challenge for agencies is to stay alert and to have a system on how do we spot the new technologies, how do we evaluate them and figure out which ones are relevant for us to look deeper into and which ones should we let go of, and how do we turn that into relevant products that we can sell, like workshops, development methodologies, sparring in different areas, like for example for innovation. The problem is that the borderline between product development and product communication is very blurred in a digital world. So I think that marketing plays a huge role also in product development, because we need to come up with something that serves the purpose that we can communicate. And we also need to do it before we tell it. Otherwise it's just, you know, some kind of green or pink washing or whatever you want to call it. So as a communication agency, we need to be involved in the actual doing and not just being involved in the telling.
Very nice. Exactly the same question. And the question was, what is the biggest challenge in this era? But now for clients.
I think as a company right now, you need to face the fact that there's a new target group that are becoming mature, that first of all are grown up in a digital world. So their way of looking at the world is much more blurred. They don't regard the digital world as a specific area and the virtual and the physical world as something else. These two areas are blurred for them. So for them it's easy and very natural to jump between being physical and digital, and also being physical and digital at the same time. We need to understand that. We also need to understand that these new consumers or business leaders has a much higher focus on saving the world that they're going to live in and that they're going to put children into. And I think that companies will be chosen and will be selected off if they are not able to really show how their products and services are built with a purpose.
Okay. I heard you talking about the revival of the website. What are the biggest differences between the websites we see today and we see tomorrow?
I think for the last 10 years we have been talking about the death of the website. Companies have spent on their own platforms, and instead they have used their energy on pushing the dialogue over to third-party platforms like social media, for example. because for a period of time it was a cheaper and more effective way to do it. Just to wake up one morning and understand that, hey, all my customer data, everything they do and everything they look at and everything they want, that's not my ownership. That's owned by this third-party platform. It's a high price to pay. That's also why it's free. There's no such things as a free lunch. So I think it's extremely important that companies begin to take back ownership of their relationships, their content, and their data. And that's actually good news for agencies, because we need to be the one that can help them in creating destinations that are actually so compelling and so relevant that the end consumer actually wants to go there instead of another place. It's not a simple task, but it needs to be done, because third-party cookies is going away, and regulation are putting very, very effective strengths on third-party platforms' ability to collect data and to segment on it. So we will not be able to do what we could just 2 or 3 years ago. So we need to do this.
Great. What do you think is the message that we can give to agencies you just saw as the biggest opportunity for the next decade or something like that?
I think that as an agency there's a lot of opportunities in what I just explained in there, because there are a lot of new things that need to be done. I think that it's the mindset for an agency might be the most important thing to change. Going from being a reactive agency to being a proactive agency, to actually stepping up and becoming a strategic partner with the clients, and not just somebody that execute on a brief, but actually help companies, guiding them in the right direction in order to survive and stay relevant in a changed future. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's a different offering than what we used to do. It's much more strategic, and it has future implications. We need to take bigger risks, and maybe sometimes we need to share that risk with our clients as well. But I think the ones that succeed are the ones that will strive and become the largest agencies going forward. That's also why you see the blend right now between consulting agencies like Accenture, Deloitte, McKinsey. They're buying up creative agencies and digital agencies and content agencies, because they know that in that zone between the strategic understanding and the implementation, that's where the real gain is to be made going forward.
You told us about amazing stuff in the meta world. What do you expect of the meta world? Is it going to be bigger than the real world, or how can I look at it? As I'm an older guy, as many of the people in the audience was. How do you describe this new world? Is that the new world, the new reality?
I think we cannot really describe the meta world. I think the first thing we all got to do is to go back and buy the best pair of virtual reality goggles that's out there. I would wait a few months because there's a new pair coming out, because it needs to be experienced. And for all the people in that room that hasn't really tried the best quality virtual reality experience yet, it's very hard to comprehend what it is that I'm talking about. Once you put on a suit and a pair of haptic gloves, put yourself in a machine where you can move around without actually moving, get real spatial audio and the right goggles, and then enter into a world that is virtual and start conversations and touching stuff and so on. Today, with technology that is available today, once you get that experience, you get that epiphany about what this is all about, and how real it's going to be, and where we will be within 10 years in this area. I think it's bound to happen, and it's both extremely exciting, but it's also extremely terrifying, because what is real? If it feels real, it's hard to say, right? And I think we will end up in a situation. I mentioned that more than 300 million people are now maybe dependent on social media, almost like it's an illness. I think this has the potential to be even bigger. So how do we regulate that? How do we make sure that people also go out and smell the real flowers and take a walk in the Icelandic nature when there's an alternative that is that much easier? I don't know for sure. And that's one of the big challenges when we talk about this.
I have a final question for you. It really is the final question. You mentioned a lot of things today, but is there something you forgot to say or just want to say afterwards?
Well, there are a lot of areas that we didn't get to cover. I mentioned a little bit about the future of foods, which I think is a really, really fascinating area. There's the whole Web 3.0, which is also an extremely interesting development. Like if you kind of compare Web 1.0 to Web 2.0, is a little bit like looking at the Encyclopedia Britannica when that was put online, and then look at Wikipedia. Now the third version will be maybe like walking into a virtual museum where all the information, where Einstein will be talking to you, explaining his theories to you and so on. So Web 3.0, part of that has to do with blockchain technology, part of that has to do with the whole metaverse that I talked about, but that's kind of a development that are looking into envisioning what will the web be 10 years from now, how will the internet be? I think that's very interesting as well.
Thank you very much for this interview after your presentation.
Thank you.